Hello again. Today I'll be going over all the different self-healing sources that are good in PvP. Self-healing sources are one of the most important defensive components for PvP builds right now. If you don't have enough self-healing sources, you will probably die too much, especially if you aren't an experienced player. You'll notice that as part of the Mod 21 meta, there is an excessive amount of self-healing available. There's more out there than you could ever need. Naturally, I figured it'd be fitting to do this video sitting in a swamp. Note that I won't mention every single self-heal out there. I will only be going over the ones that are commonly used in PvP. Also, this may come as a shock to many of you, but literally the only self-healing sources I run are the 5 items on the list that I put asterisks on. I do have a few other defenses, but those are not self-heals. Now to start going over the self-healing sources one by one. First up, we have PvP healing potions. PvP potions are essential to maintain if you are actually trying to compete, but right now I wouldn't worry as much about them since nobody is actually competing right now. These potions are sold by various PvP vendors. You buy them with the glory currency. You get glory from playing in public PvP matches such as solo queue. Private queue matches don't grant glory. I recommend that you always buy your PvP potions from the generalist merchant in the strongholds. They are unbound when you obtain them from this source. This means you can give extra stacks to your friends or sell them on the auction house. You'll burn through healing potions rapidly when playing PvP a lot, so remember to buy yourself extra stacks in case you run out in the middle of a match. Here's a valuable tip on how to use your PvP potions. I recommend activating them when you are at around half health, and try to space out your survival items in general so you don't run out. Don't wait until your health gauge is almost empty to use your healing potions. If you wait that long, it'll likely be too late for the potion to save you. PvP healing potions take a few seconds to kick in. They also shouldn't be activated in the middle of a dodge or while you can be interrupted with a CC effect. They might go on cooldown without activating if you do. Once you've gotten yourself some PvP healing potions, there is a very strong campaign boon called Lingering Medicine. You want to make sure you have 5 points in this boon. Lingering Medicine is one of the strongest heals in PvP, and has a very high chance to proc whenever you use a PvP healing potion. It probably has at least a 50% chance to proc. This boon is pretty important on Rogue. When this boon is active, it allows us to stay out in the open for a prolonged period of time without as much risk of dying. For me, this boon shows up as lots and lots of 29k heal ticks. I will keep seeing these for 30 seconds straight when this happens. When you have Lingering Medicine active, you should get really aggressive and go on the attack until it runs out. Notably, there are 2 other campaign boons with the word lingering in their name. These 2 boons increase the size of the heal ticks you get from your healing potions a little bit. I would prioritize getting the speed boon and all of the good stat and HP boons first before putting points into these. But they are nice to have. There is also a guild boon called Healing Potion Bonus. At max rank, this boon increases the size of your own PvP healing potion ticks by 48%. If you're just starting out and don't know much about rotating yet, I recommend taking this boon. If you look at the tooltip of my healing potions, these are my healing potion boon ticks when this boon is turned off, around 30k. When I turn on this boon, These change to nearly 50k heal ticks, which you can also see in the tooltip. You can see there it changed from 34k to 49k. Later on, you'll want to switch to the 10% increased run speed boon instead. Note the group that don't use the group healing potion bonus guild boon in PvP. This group healing potion bonus wasn't working in PvP the last several times it was tested. Moving on to insignia heals. The big three healing insignia powers for PvP are Survivor's Blessing, Barbarian's Revelry, and Oppressor's Reprieve. One of each of these is what I personally run, as you can see here. There is a fourth healing insignia power that is also really good. This is Champion's Return. It's common for players on more exposed classes like Wizard and Ranger to run multiple copies of one of these in combination with other powers. For example, 2 copies of Survivor's Blessing, 2 copies of Barbarian's Revelry, and 1 copy of Oppressor's Reprieve. Some players remove Oppressor's Reprieve altogether and replace it with a second copy of something else. Notably, Rogue benefits the most from Oppressor's Reprieve out of all the classes and could run 2 copies of this if they wanted to. This is because of the CC stack system. Whenever a player in PvP reaches 4 CC stacks, they become completely immune to all control effects for 10 seconds. Oppressor's Reprieve stops proccing while you are CC immune. Rogue spends the least amount of time out in the open out of all the classes, so they don't reach 4 CC stacks very often compared to things like Wizard and Ranger. Another useful thing to know is that a lot of self-heals scale with your maximum hit points. So the higher your HP is, the bigger your self-healing procs will be. Moving on to armor and weapon enchantments that grant self-healing. Holy Avenger and Negation both grant self-heals that can be really strong when combined with other sources of self-healing, including each other. Moving on to healing mount powers. The strongest self-healing power in PvP is this one right here, Rejuvenating Favor. Now this mount combat power was granting me 130k healing ticks when I tested it today. It easily will refill your health gauge and then some. This power can result in incredibly OP builds when combined with hardcore mini-boss Vault of Stars rings such as Band of Air and Ring of Darkness, plus a somewhat well-geared build. You'd be able to comfortably take on 3 or more enemies by yourself and still kill. You don't even need to be on the strongest classes for item combinations involving Rejuvenating Favor to be a concern. Now, obviously, Rejuvenating Favor is on the ban list for my PvP events. It is completely banned in private 5 vs 5s, and it is restricted in solo queue. In solo queue, it's okay to run this power by itself, but combining this with hardcore mini-boss Vault of Stars rings is a banned combination. There is another problematic combination for Rejuvenating Favor, and that is running it with Wheel of Elements, Water Buff, Drowned Weapons, plus Rejuvenating Favor. This combo thankfully requires a lot of people to be stupid enough to run it all at the same time in order to risk killing the PvP queue from this. Either that or the person running it would already have to be running a build that is close to max and fully optimized. But make no mistake, this is still very much a cancer combination. Don't use this if you don't need it. Now, Rejuvenating Favor does have one weakness. It only heals you. It doesn't directly help you defend your teammates. Swift Golden Lion can beat Rejuvenating Favor in this specific area, though Lion is not as powerful as Rejuvenating Favor is overall. Now to go over passive mount powers. There's a passive healing mount power called Providence. This is the passive power from Swift Golden Lion. It's really good and it heals both you and your teammates. Though if you are on a class that needs all of its stats, such as Rogue or Ranger, you usually will want to use the 4K accuracy mount passive instead. Confusingly, there is another passive healing mount power that is called Rejuvenation. It's one word instead of two. Let me see if I can find that for you. Yep, there it is. Rejuvenation is the passive mount power from Skeleton Steed. People don't normally run this power anymore, but it is still good. Fighter and Ranger used to use this. Moving on to healing artifacts. The only relevant self-healing artifact is Wheel of Elements, specifically the water buff from it. This water buff is really strong and it remains active for 30 seconds. Good healers, especially Azu, often give their teammates this buff. You either will have to physically walk into the correct buff out of the 4 that appear on the ground, or you will need a skilled player like Azu to angle themselves in such a way that the buff spawns directly on top of you. Most DPS players don't run this artifact themselves, instead they let their team support drop this artifact on top of them. Moving on to weapons. This will take me a moment to find. Okay, the only relevant self-healing weapon set is Drowned Weapons. These weapons are a really strong heal that is up 50% of the time. Now, on the downside, these weapons blunt your damage significantly to run. But they are very beginner friendly. Tanky classes almost always run these if they have them. If you are close to max, usually you won't want to run Drowned Weapons anymore. You'll be more effective at winning matches if you switch to a DPS-oriented weapon set at this point. Counterintuitively, rogues running Drowned Weapons are usually at a disadvantage in duels versus rogues that chose a DPS set like Watchers or Lionheart. Notably, Wizard in particular benefits a lot from Drowned Weapons. As a heads up, Drowned Weapons are really expensive to maintain in Mod 21. They used to be farmable via a quest, but now the only way to get them is from buying a really expensive old weapon choice pack off the auction house. Most people that own Drowned Weapons farmed theirs before Mod 21 hit. Now I can try to find you that pack. I don't know if I'll be able to find it, but let me give it a shot. Yep, they still exist. Okay, so this weapon choice pack, as you can see, it costs a ridiculous amount. Will give you the Drowned set. Now, I've messed with the Burning set before, and I can tell you that Burning set's kind of redundant, so I wouldn't feel tempted by that one. Like, it's nice to have, but I never use it. But the ones you probably want for PvP are Drowned Weapons. You don't actually need Drowned Weapons on any class, especially if you're close to maxed, but there was some misunderstandings where some people thought that you did. They can be really strong on Wizard though, as I mentioned. Now, moving on to healing gear bonuses. There it is. The Forsaken chest piece, like the Forsaken chest slot gear or the Crone chest slot gear, have a small but good self-healing power on them. These chest pieces are both really easy to get. One of them can be bought in the Seal store, and the other is from the maps in Avernus Wastes. This item is best in slot on tanky classes. Rogue and Ranger usually pick Ribcage instead. So if you're a Rogue or Ranger, run Ribcage because you need those damage stacks more than you need this. Notably, there are some very similar chest pieces out there that proc on critical hits instead of deflects. For some reason, you deflect more often than you crit usually, even if your crit is higher than your deflection chance. So I recommend sticking with these two chest pieces instead of those other ones in most cases. The deflection version, the deflect version may be beating the crit one in part because you aren't required to be attacking in order to proc it too. Okay, moving on to something else. There is a food buff out there called Neverwinter in Red Veins. This is a good self-heal. It's cheap as dirt too. Moving on to class-based self-heals. I don't know all of these by name, but I recommend having a look at your character's feats and powers section to see if you have any good self-heals available to you. Rogue doesn't have any self-heals. For Icewind Dale, open world PvP only, there are 3 more sources of self-healing you could add. Now, I don't play any Icewind Dale myself because it allows pet active powers and those are broken as fuck. But for those of you that do play open world, there are numerous healing companion powers you could add to your build. If you are flagged for PvP but standing outside the PvP open world area, Stones of Health and PvE healing potions work. If you step inside the open world zone, these items stop working. That is everything I wanted to discuss today. See you guys next time.